Greetings, Patrick here. 8 questions with, and thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you for yesterday. I had a great show yesterday with Sean and Kenny, who are launching their podcast, talking movies with Kenny and Sean, Sean and Kenny. Had a great time last night. A lot of laughs, a lot of wow, a very very lively chat, which is always fun to see. It makes the show so much fun when you see some heads in there just having a great time, talking to themselves, talking among each other, asking questions. It really makes the show fun. So I came on a little bit, just a couple seconds early. I got some things to cover before our guest, poet and writer Kaytee Thrun gets here. Um, she will be here, and we will be having a night of creativity and poetry and writing and all sorts of good stuff. Love it when we can get a poet to come on. Love it. There will be some readings. She'll be sharing some of her work with us, which is always an honor. It's sort of like asking a musician to sing a song, or a writer, a novelist to read a passage from their book, or a comedian to do a little bit of a set, um, which we've all had done on our show. We've had that. We've had that happen, and very grateful for that too. And I don't take that lightly. All right, so this is the middle show of the week. Tomorrow night we have small business owner Mike Pyro will be with us from Mike's Monsters Collectibles and Toys, based in Stratford, Connecticut. He will be our guest tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Cannot wait for that. He's going to be fascinating to talk to, and I really, really hope you guys come up there and come and support that show. It's going to be a great one. I promise you that. Mike is a Mike has a big heart, and I can't wait to tell you guys all about him and show off his business. His store looks absolutely fantastic. It looks fantastic, and I just can't wait. Hey, Steve, how are you, sir? How are you? Captain Jack actually came by yesterday. Captain Jack Scupper, he came by yesterday and said hello. That was an amazing, it was a very amazing that he did that. Here's Greg Scorpion in the house. Thank you so much. I always appreciate it. You're in Florida for a few days. Be safe down there. Be safe down there. Yes, yes, crazy Florida. We got Florida's weather here from the tropical storm. I guess the barrel came through barrel, and so we had rain pretty much all day. It just stopped maybe about 90 minutes ago, but it pretty much rained all night and today. Not really, really bad. Though I did spring a leak. I have sprung a leak, so I have to call in a repair guy to help me out with that. Um, all right, let me tell you real quick what's going on here at the show. So tomorrow night, Mike will be here. Next Tuesday, on the 16th, we will have two shows here with us. We will have two shows with us. We are going to make a pond because we had to reschedule one guest who had a death in the family, so we had to come back and reschedule, and that will be Derek Barr from the UK. He will be here with us tomorrow on Tuesday, on the 16th at 2 o'clock, and then on the nighttime, the closing, we'll be having film director Josh Graves will be with us. Josh Graves will be here, and we will be talking about all things Zombear, uh, which we had to go out there and talk to Josh about this. Uh, Zombear, I mean, Cocaine Werewolf just came out last week. We got Zombear. We're going to be talking about Zombear here. I see people they've already they're including myself. We uh we already we already reviewed Cocaine Shark and Cocaine Bear. Hey, Stephen, how are you? And Josh will be here with us on Tuesday. On the 17th, we have fine actor Eric Hansen will be with us. He's going to be a lot of fun to talk to too, and his star is pretty much on the rise. He just got done doing a national commercial for Coors, featuring Eric and none other than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Holmes did a commercial for Coors, and Eric was part of the commercial, and that's pretty cool. I didn't know that when I booked him. I didn't know that. We booked the show, and then we've been talking, and then he sent me the commercial, and I'm going like, well, I'll be damned. That's gonna be fun to talk about. Um, and then a week from Thursday on the 18th, we have rising young artist Haley Henson will be here with us. Haley is a cosplayer, she's an actress, and she is a singer songwriter. So she will be with us on the 18th. Okay, some silliness now because we all need a little bit of silliness. So it is week two. It is week two of Shark and Schlock here on the channel. I teamed up with my good friend Eric from Hey Internet. It's Eric, and he and I are doing Shark and Schlock all month here in July. Every week we are releasing a video. I gave him 5 shark movies to watch and review, and he gave me 5 schlock movies to watch and review. Um, Last week, he got Swamp Shark, and everybody loves Swamp Shark. I gave him a good movie to watch too. I feel really proud of myself for that because Swamp Shark was pretty badass, to tell you the truth. I got Creepshow 3, so yeah, I got Creepshow 3. Um, but I inadvertently, and I do mean this really I inadvertently evened it up because I gave him a movie that I saw the cover on, and the cover looked badass. This hot babe with a spear with a spear gun, and it's called Shark Huntress. And I'm going like, that's got to be a good movie. Sure, Shark Huntress. That's with a hot babe on the cover. I mean, it's one thing about shark movies. Um, every shark movie's bad, good shark movie, bad shark movie, except for maybe Jaws, always has a hot babe in it. Always has a hot babe. So I'm thinking, well, I'm helping my buddy out. He's going to be able to watch this. I mean, he had Christy Swanson to look at last week. This week he had Katrina Gray to look at. What could go wrong? Well, you'll have to go to his page and find out. Me, I got let's see, I got River of Darkness. And quite honestly, I'm pretty happy about that. I thought River of Darkness was pretty fun. It stars some ex wrestlers, um, Kevin Nash, Sid Vicious, and Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle actually is the lead of the picture, and it. I think I surprised Eric when I sat there. I said, I like this movie. I didn't mind it at all. I thought it was all right. I actually thought Kurt Angle. I was like, it's too bad he didn't do more of these. To tell you the truth, he has a really good presence. Now, is he an actor? No, not yet. But he could have worked to that. I mean, hell, look at John Cena for peace sakes. And come on. I mean, there you go. Do I need to say more? I mean, Kurt Angle has enough, has the same charisma as John Cena. Uh, well, yeah, yeah. River of Darkness was. I thought it was I thought it was all right. I liked the fog's angle of it. It reminded me of the fog. Had that same angle to it. I was all right with it. Oh, but next week, the next 2 weeks, actually, yeah, yeah, yeah. Man, I didn't. I'm doing something I never thought would ever see the light of day on my channel again. I never thought I would see it but it is. But I gave him one too next week called Shark of the Corn. I have a feeling that one was gonna be rather entertaining. But after that, wait till you see what I brought to the party. I think you like it. So all Sharks and Slock. We're having a great time with it. We're getting it out there. We're sharing it out with you guys. Hopefully, you guys will take a look at it. Um, and next Monday starts my overview of Land of the Lost for Dollar Theater. We're covering each of the 3 seasons individually, and we'll be talking about each season as they progress. So next Monday will be season 1. The Monday after that will be season 2. After that will be season 3. and I'm looking forward to you guys' reaction to that as well. Um, there might be some people out here that are too young to know about the Land of the Lost, but if you're my age or a little bit older or younger, you'll know about the Land of the Lost, and hopefully this will be a different take on it, other than it's just a kids show, because that's not how me and the Cheetah saw it. Let's see. That's right. It has been an awesome collaboration. This has been one of my funnest collaborations I've done on the channel, and I'm looking forward to more of these with you, Eric, because I am having a blast. And I think we've been making some people laugh by the comments I've been seeing on here. People have been really enjoying it. So I've been having a blast. I don't know what we'll be talking about next time. I don't know. We have to we still have to plan that, but whatever it is, it's going to be a lot of fun. I want to give my shout out to a friend of the channels, a lady who's been on here before. Hopefully, I'll be able to get her back on in August. So, actress and stand-up comedian Lauren Faulkner fell and broke her leg a few weeks ago. I mean, we're not talking just like break the leg, like throw a cast on it. She suffered a very, very serious injury, and she is being kept off her feet. It happened in June, and they're saying that she probably would not be able to actually do any like real walking, place any real weight on it until September. September. Damn, that's messed up. Now, most broken legs, believe it or not, you slap some cast on it, you put it back in place, put a few screws and everything in it, and you're back and going within 2 or 3 months, right? Well, depending on your physical condition. Well, Laura is a young, healthy young lady, and still this injury has really it. I boggled my mind when I saw how bad it was. I mean, I was shocked. I didn't think anything like that could happen. I thought it was the injury that I would equate with an athletics, like a football injury. I expect to see somebody on the football field get an injury like that, not just a perfectly healthy young lady who just fell down, but she did. And yeah, really bad. And hopefully we're going to try to get her back on the show in August. So I'm going to be giving you guys a little bit of updates as well. I just wanted you guys to keep her in your thoughts because she's a really nice person and she was a delightful guest, and really bummed out about that for her, that she had such a horrible injury. So yeah, if I will I will I'll post her I'll post the interview that we did with her. I'll post that in my community tab, and you guys can go over there, and I'll put her link to her Instagram because she's on Instagram mostly, and you guys can go over there and drop off a couple of comments. Tell her that we're thinking about her. Hopefully, we can get her onto the show in August. It all depends how she feels. I mean, you don't want to talk to anybody who's in a tremendous a lot of pain. Um, but she is progressing. She's got a great spirit about her, and so just want to keep her up. Just want to keep her up. And of course, our good friend, we hope our good friend Wes, aka the Ice Lord, he is on vacation. We are rolling it out for our good buddy Wes. Hopefully, he is enjoying the vacation and getting rejuvenated. Uh, really happy really hopeful and excited to see what's going to happen in a few weeks. Um, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be doing the nice circle this week or not. Um, I won't probably I probably won't come to that until tomorrow, but we might do the nice circle on a Friday night, just to get the show out there for Wes, and to talk him up a little bit. And you guys can come over and hang out, and it'll just probably be just a chill stream. Nothing, no topics or anything. I might rant and rave a little bit more about Creep Show 3. I'm sure everybody will like that. Um, maybe we'll do a Louisa Warren retrospective. No, ain't gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. Uh, yeah. Yeah, we'll figure out something. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out on Friday. If I do, if I don't, I know for sure that we'll do it next week. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it every week or every other week, and so I might just do it. I don't know. You guys tell me. You tell me in the comments if you want to see my face again on Friday for doing the nice circle. Leave a comment down below uh, and let me know. All right, the doorbell has rung. We are going to the land of creativity and beauty and mystery and spirituality. We're gonna hang out with one of Chicago's best poets and writers. And please help me welcome Kaytee Thrun to Eight Questions with. Here we go. Ta-da!
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, and I said your name
Excellent.
right.
Troon. It
Yeah.
rhymes with moon.
You know how that's a rare success for me.
What?
I think a lot of people come when they see a last name that's gonna be like, they look at the last name and go like, "Oh, I'm so there for this just to watch Patrick screw it up."
I just moved in
But
my
I
chair so I'm
didn't.
centered.
But I didn't. I got it done right.
Awesome.
So, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, did you get the rain today that we got?
We did get some rain, not terribly, not too terribly, but it's Chicago, so it rains all the time. So you just have to be really used to it.
People are coming in. I want to say that real quick to the chat. Everybody coming in. Thank you for coming in and supporting this one with Kaytee, because this is
I'm
one
going to
that
see who's
you.
on.
This is one that I'm glad you're a part of to the chat because I don't really get a lot of like upper level elite class poets on here as of yet. So when I get a chance to get somebody like Kaytee, it's I'm just overjoyed. It's a real honor actually. I love poetry. I love words. I love language. I may not speak it really well. I mean, I may be a short sentence guy, but I do love it, and I do like hearing it, and I do admire the people who can come up and create it. Um, so,
Well, thank you.
uh, as far as my question about the rain, we got a little bit of that. We got a little bit of that, but just enough for me to spring a leak in my kitchen ceiling. So uh,
It's not too
I'm
bad.
I'm so overjoyed by that because I mean I get a chance to fix it, which is what I'm overjoyed about.
Are
Um,
you a handyman?
no,
Ah,
no, no, no,
n-
not at all.
neither am
Uh,
I.
um, all right, so I want to get into this right away because there's a lot of ground to cover. And it sounds like a cliche question, but in this case, it really is not. This is truly a informative question because I'm sure the journey is going to be fun to follow. And that is, how did you get involved in writing?
I have written my entire life. The first poem that I can remember writing, I was 6 years old.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it was a combination of my parents were artists. They were florists and decorators, and prior to that, my mother was an English teacher. So I had the benefit of an old school, really, strict, education in English from my mother, combined with kind of the artistry of both my parents. More specifically, my father, that just from day one had me into literature, had me into art. So, I mean, the first one I remember is when I was 6 years old. So.
That's impressive. And I'm sure having your mom there, and you're reading, I'm sure it's probably when you did your first reading too. And did
Uh,
read in front of your parents or your school?
Not really, no. For the majority of my life, I kept my writing relatively personal. I would share it with close friends and read, but for the most part, I had a lot of journals. you know, one for basically every year of my life, uh, that, you know, really reflected the time I was in, whether it was high school or junior high school, the type of poetry it was. But I kept that mostly to myself. Occasionally I would put it out there, but I would do it uh, anonymously or subtly, I think, unless it was to a close friend.
It's sort of interesting, isn't it? Like, we talk to a lot of actors and actresses, and they'll say that how they got their start in high school, high school play. I know a lot of kids my age that were in junior high or high school that formed bands that played out, two very artistic endeavors. But I didn't really see a lot of poetry, a lot of writing per se, going out there and sharing that.
Right. All my friends were the people in the bands. They were the skaters, they were the punks, they were the ones that ended up in the bands that would play, you know, the garage bands, right?
Right.
Era. So those were my friends. So, you know, perhaps kind of growing up with those people as a part of my life influenced that performance aspect of what I do instead of just writing poetry, but performing it as well. Because I
Yeah, because
can't
most high
sing or
school,
play any instrument at all.
no.
Cannot.
I'm just thinking, I'm thinking back, I don't know that many high schoolers even today, and I see a lot, you see a lot out there on social media, but I don't see a lot of teenagers or preteens or teenagers getting up there and showing and sharing their poetry. They don't do videos of them reading poems. You'll get them playing bands, you'll get them acting, or even hell, you'll get them eating. They'll be sitting at a table, they'll be filming themselves eating, but asking to share a poetry, and it's like, yeah, that's gonna be a little bit, what
Well,
what makes poetry?
well,
What
can I
makes it?
touch on that real quick? Because I
Yes,
have
please do.
a story. So April is National Poetry Month, and the Harold Washington Library in downtown Chicago had a large poetry event, workshops, and the National U.S. Poet Laureate was there. Chicago Poet Laureate was there. And at the end, there was a very large open mic hosted by Eros in Chicago, who's a well-known spoken word poet. And people signed up, and I, of course, was one of those. So I was one of the first ones up. And shortly after me, uh, there was this girl that went up that couldn't have been more than maybe like 15 or 16 years old. And you could tell she's a little nervous, right? And she reads her piece, and it's really good. And she does a good job presenting. And so everyone is just like, you know, that's awesome because you have full grown adults that can't do that. You know, for years I couldn't do that. And I think now there's a little bit more poetry in the world and hopefully reaching younger people. So we'll start to see again a resurgence of young people doing poetry like we did in like the 80s and the 90s. So I'm hopeful.
I hope so too. I hope so too. You and I touched upon this yesterday. How I used to host a poetry night, and I had a group of very very skilled and talented poets. I mean, I loved hearing them. I could just sit there and listen to them all night, and I did. But they pretty much all had one thing in common, and that was they always had to have a little liquid courage before they read in front of everybody. And we're
And
talking like, yeah, and we're talking like you read before this same pretty much, maybe the same crowd, give or take one or two people,
sure,
but
sure,
you read in front of the same crowd last month and the month before and the month
sure.
before that. And it's like, why, to me, it's like you would think that you would become more comfortable,
Right. There's
being in
repetitive
front
open mics that I go to.
of.
Uh, I'm not going to speak to myself as a younger adult because that's a different life. But now I don't drink. So, you know, I don't need the liquid courage to get on stage. I just
No.
don't like alcohol. And but I do get if it's a larger show, not an open mic, but if it's a larger show that I'm doing or a theater show or something, the larger audience, I will get nervous before. And my manager kind of shoves me in a green room or something and gets everything ready and the mic or the stand or whatever I need, and grabs me and just kind of throws me on stage. But once I'm on the stage, it's just like calm. It's just like there's nothing. I feel no nerves, no anxiety, nothing. So
I didn't read myself, but I can relate to that feeling. Like I used to do rock shows in California, and I used to work at a venue where when we had a big show, especially if it was one on one that I was responsible for. Man, I would be nervous, Katie. I'd be all over the place. I'd be doing the phones here, doing request lists here, handling rate. I mean, I was like running around with my head come off. But come 8 o'clock and the doors open, it just all of a sudden everything slowed down. It
right,
slowed down, and I was like, oh,
right.
okay, I got this. Um, that's got to be like the same feeling you must experience when you get that. I don't know. You think it's in your case? Do you think because of the caliber of speaker you are and writer? Do you think it's more of a case of just energy more than anxiety?
Uh, Both. I would say. I would say both. A lot of energy. I am a person filled with energy. I'm drinking an energy drink, so I'm a person filled with energy. But normally, I mean, I sleep like 4 hours a night. But uh, part of it is the energy and the excitement of how many people are out there. Who's going to see me? What's going to happen? Am I going to remember what I'm going to say? And just all the worries. And then the second I step out, it's just like I'm kind of in this box and able to present what I want to present. And I, I, I sometimes hear the crowd. I sometimes don't. So if someone's recording me, oftentimes I'll go back and listen to it and I'll be like, oh, I didn't hear that at that point, or someone said something, or someone clapped, or made a comment or something like that.
Um, do you listen to yourself? Do you
Yeah.
after your performance is recorded, you go back and relax and then come back and listen to and if you do, what do you listen for?
Um, that's a multi-part question. Okay, so obviously I record and post on social media constantly. So those videos I see all the time. I'm editing them. I'm putting them out there. I'm taking them down. I'm putting them on other sites. So I'm very comfortable seeing those. If I'm doing a live performance, I usually try to get someone, at least with their cell phone, to you know grab some video of me, and I'll watch it and typically be pretty pleased with it. Uh, there's one performance I did, and it was the largest performance I did, and I think it was a matter of nerves that makes it difficult for me to watch. But it was when I opened at the Metro for a band called the French Police and Nocturna, which is the nation's longest running, largest goth dance party. It runs several times a year, and there was five, six, 700 people there. I'm not sure uh, by that time, and that was the largest in-person crowd that I had been in front of for the purposes of poetry. When I was younger, I did plays and things like that, but for the purposes of poetry, that was the largest crowd I had been in front of, and the biggest stage I had been on. That had also been a stage that I watched concerts on when I was a kid, because I think everyone goes to the Metro if they're in Chicago.
Right. We have some comments coming through. First of
Hey,
all, thank you, Mr.
Dante.
Bones. Mr. Bones for coming in, sharing off some links. Thank you so much. Steven says I can see her do ASMR. I guess I'll game. I'm game. I think I already know the answer to this, but I'm game. Have you ever seen that ASMR?
No, what is that?
Okay, so I don't know how to pronounce this. It's basically people just they speak in a very low voice, like almost like a whisper,
Oh, yes, I can do that.
and then they or they eat. and they just, the only thing you hear really from them is just the sound of them eating, which I can't stand. I physically cannot stand that. I would have, if
Yeah,
someone
I
just said,
agree.
yeah,
I
no.
agree. So
Um,
so Dante, I know. I see someone say hi. Um,
Humpty has a question for you as well. Question for Katie. Have you ever considered recording audiobooks? You have the voice for it.
uh, yes and no. Did I ever consider recording an audiobook? No. Personally, I don't listen to audiobooks, and it has a relatively narrow market of people that enjoy traditional audiobooks. That being said, I have spent the majority of my life with musician friends, so I opted to take my last book, which had 99 pieces in it, so it was a longer book, and record it with ambient kind of background music uh, as 4 albums. So each chapter, each of the 4 chapters in the book is its own album uh, that is typical album length. So I have 2 albums streaming right now on every platform of me reading. So that, in essence, is an audio book in a way, I guess, because it's my book in audio form, but in a presented in a way that I think will reach more people and be more accessible on a streaming service than maybe an audiobook service. So,
We have Jason has come in, and he also has a question for you, Katie. Question for Katie. Do you have a specific flow for your live delivery of your poems, or is it something that takes shape after it's written?
the very first time I read it out loud is typically the same exact way I'll read it forever, and I don't know how I do that. I'll read something for social media, I'll post it, and then a year will go by and I'll be looking for something to post. And I'm like, oh, I haven't read this one in a while, so I'll read that one. And then I'll realize I had already done it and listen to the 2 pieces. And I change my voice in the same way. I have some weird inflections in my voice, and I'll raise it, I'll lower it, I'll emphasize different words, and I'll pause, and I'll do it at the same exact spots, even though I've only read the piece 2 times aloud. So somewhere the first time I read it aloud, it clicks in my brain with how I wrote it, because when I write, I break up sentences quite a bit. I play around with some, you know, people into a very traditional grammar would dislike it. I mix words around a little bit, but that's because there's a musicality to it when I do the spoken word, and
Um,
I don't consciously do that with my voice, but my voice does that, and every time I read the same piece, I basically read it the same way unconsciously.
is grammar important in poetry? Is it vital? Is it key?
No, no,
I don't think so either.
no. Yeah, I missed that day in English class. Uh, I am the definition of like free form poetry, because I use commas where you shouldn't. I don't use them where you should. I repeat words. I cut sentences in half. I capitalize things that shouldn't be capitalized. Uh, so I I definitely don't follow the rules in that respect. Uh, but I do it in a way that when the reader reads it, they'll pause at the moments I want them to pause and just take a breath. Or if they're listening to it, they'll feel that pause and then get that next sentence and then understand kind of the flow of where we're going. So I do use my voice in the presentation. It's not really conscious, and it's not rehearsed.
Um, so let's go back. You were in your as you in your teen years. You wrote all the time, but you really hadn't spoken in front of a crowd. What was your first time you actually got up in front of a crowd of strangers, not necessarily people you knew, but people that you didn't know? Where was your first time that you ever did your poetry reading at?
For poetry, Gosh, that would have been a while ago. I believe that was junior college, Harper College. For those that know the Chicago area, has a literary and art journal that if you Google, you can find a copy of from when I was in it. Uh, so we did have a event where we read poetry and everyone showed their art that was in this annual, art and literary department magazine that the college put out.
Um,
So that would have been
and
the first time.
and what was it like? I mean, here you are the first time out. I mean, now that one time I could actually see you being nervous. I think
I
everybody
w-
would have been nervous.
I don't know that I was nervous because as a child I was in plays, I was in dance, I was in commercials, I you know went to different classes and things, so that like nervousness wasn't there. But I think maybe when I was younger I was more worried that I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't writing correctly. And by correctly I mean my real voice. And it was, I think, junior year, sophomore or junior year in high school. I picked up a poetry book by Sharon Olds. Um, or is it by Marge Piercy? The Moon is Always Female is the name of the book. It was published, I believe, in the 70s. And I read that book, and Sharon Olds, Marge Piercy are two of my favorite poets. Margaret Atwood. They all have this different voice than I had heard in female poets before that. I had heard very delicate poetry from women, and they were the first ones that I heard screaming their truths and screaming their traumas and their stories. And so I want to live up to them because they are the ones that taught me I could speak in my own voice.
You mentioned about the screaming and you mentioned about the screaming. But let me ask you this. I sort of look like I always look at sort of spoken word more like a sledgehammer, and I always
Okay.
look at poetry. I look at poetry more like a stiletto. It's they. They both get the job done, but one's loud. I mean, spoken word is loud. It's I guess to me it's always been designed to, whereas poetry it lures you in,
Yes,
waves
I
you in.
definitely think that.
And spoken word is meant to grab you by the shirt and say, "Listen to me, listen to me." Um, I mean, what do you,
There-
why do you think that is? I mean, do
there's a
you think that? Do you
difference
think?
in there's a difference in reading poetry aloud and doing spoken word, and that's, I think, where some people really get confused. And frankly, there's a lot of people online that read their poetry aloud that assume that that is spoken word, and it's a different thing. Spoken word has more of a performance value to it, and I believe more of a storytelling kind of value to it. So you can read a piece and it can be long, it can be short, it can be in strict form like haiku, it can be free form, it can be anything that you want when you read it. But when you are speaking it, you have to tone it differently and emphasize differently and be theatrical to draw the audience into a story that might be 1 minute long or 2 minutes long or 5 minutes long. And that's hard. But it's fun. It's definitely fun.
Uh, I've always thought that though. I've seen people do spoken word, and it's like it's always really loud and it's really assertive, and I mean it's cool as hell, when it's done right. When it's done right,
I,
otherwise it's a bunch of yelling.
I mean, everyone does spoken word differently, and Chicago is kind of the hub of spoken word. I mean, foundational start of spoken word poetry here in Chicago. Uh, but different voices are going to spin off from that over time, just like music. You know, Probably at some point all music sounded the same, and then all of a sudden we have country, we have punk, we have all these different types. So some poetry can be angry.
Hmm.
Some poetry can be forceful, some poetry can be delicate. Mine is just authentic and storytelling. So that's kind of my vibe.
I will say this, and for poetry, I will say this for poetry. I think after art itself, after art, I definitely believe that poetry is the most subjective of the creative arts.
It
You like
definitely is. You can go back. I mean, obviously, it's one of the oldest forms of written language, and obviously, poetry kind of evolved from vocal storytelling before there was even language, and these kind of miniature stories that were passed on. Um, but I forgot where I was going with that, so I don't know. Sorry. Go ahead. Next question.
it? We have a question from our friend Steve, and he has a question for you, Katie. He says, "Writing poetry, is writing poetry emotional experience?"
This is a yes and no, two-part actually. When I write, it is almost automatic. I will get a prompt from something. It could be, I see something, or it could be, part of a line I hear. Uh, it could be part of a song, just something that gives me some sort of inspiration. And I write all my poetry. I text it to myself, so I always have the ability to write with me. So I'll just start writing and writing and writing and writing and get to the end line in a piece is very important to me. So the ending line, I'll kind of pause and I'll go back and I'll read the entire piece and I'll go, oh, that's what it's about. And then I'll do the piece and the title. My writing is almost unconsciously automatic. So that part to me is not heavily emotional. When it gets emotional is when I go back sometimes and maybe I'll read it to a friend or to my manager or to someone, first before I read it on social media, be like, this is something I should read. And sometimes then I'll get emotional, or sometimes I'll be watching myself on YouTube, or I'll be watching myself on a channel and I'll listen to a piece that I haven't heard in like a year or two and I completely forgot about, and I'll, get teary eyed. So there's definitely emotion there because poetry kind of draws that thin veil between, fiction and nonfiction, right? So I think we all have to have some experiences, right, in life. Some traumatic things happen to us in order for us to express really emotively. And part of that poetry is kind of the veil of things that are in, like my last book, like dragons or different things. Obviously things that don't exist in reality.
I agree 100% with you about that. I believe that poetry and I'm not in spoken word. I believe you got to have experience in order to write to write to write. I don't think you can write poetry or spoken word, do spoken word without that experience. I mean, you can. I mean, yes, there could be you could be 14 or 15, but still, even so, you still have to draw upon what you know. It might not be a large pool, but it is a pool nonetheless.
Yeah.
Or
Well, when I
some
look
people
at
who
my
get up.
pieces, that I wrote when I was like, 14 or 15, crushing on someone or brokenhearted or angry with my parents, it's shallow. It's very shallow poetry because your emotions haven't quite sunk to the depths of hell. I think that we all sink to at some point in our lives and have to dig ourselves out of. So I think regardless of your age, you have to kind of have lived through something that has
Mm,
changed you and has given you that voice. And you know my manager tells me often, and other people have told me, that I have a responsibility to get my words out there, get my stories out there. And I feel like that's true. I feel like it's true. I feel like if I had to suffer through some of these stories, if I had to be around the people who suffered through some of these stories, if I had to be a part of, some of these stories, then they deserve to be told.
yeah,
They deserve to be preserved. The people in those stories matter. And frankly, some people are here and some people are no longer here that are in stories that I've written.
right, right.
Someone had a question I wanted to do if I always do free verse or do I have any favorite forms. I am like free as a bird is like my favorite. Like however you want to do it is my favorite because I think it should be very stream of consciousness. I have found myself the more spoken word poetry I do, the more I rhyme because I am subtly conscious of the fact that I'm going to read this, and every so often rhyming is pleasant. So I'll have a couple pieces that'll be, why are you rhyming, and then nothing, and then rhyming like once or twice in a piece, and then nothing. So that's me.
Um, yeah, I know that's still talked about among poets or not, about rhyming. Like
Yeah,
some people just look down at rhymers, and some people say, well, you can't have poetry without rhymes. I personally feel a poem does not need a rhyme.
well, it's like, does every song need to rhyme? Does every lyric need to rhyme? Does every lyric need to be the same length as the sentence before? I mean,
not
it's the
that you
same
want to get,
thing.
not that you don't want to get on the radio.
Exactly. If everything was so macro repetitive, we would lose interest in a second. It's become a world that is very instant gratification, and people are consuming bite-sized bits of information. And if they're not entertained relatively quickly, if it's something boring and repetitive, they'll swipe to whatever's next.
Right, exactly. I felt that even way back in the '80s, way back in the '80s, people were talking about that, and I'm sure even before that. I just feel like it's not a part. It's not. See, that's one thing about poetry. It's there's no really set conditions for it. You write what you know.
Yeah,
You write what you feel. You write what you've experienced. Those are like what the main mantras. Those are the part. Those are if you got those components, you too can write poetry.
I
Now,
can write about anything. Actually, I
not
did
everything.
a little kind of contest with my friends on Facebook a couple of, well, actually, I think it was probably during the pandemic because we all had this extra time to think about stupid things. So I did this little contest on Facebook. I told all my friends, send me a song, sorry, not send me a song, send me a picture, and I will do a piece of poetry for it, a picture or a photograph. Well, I had a friend that sent me a song, and I'm like, okay. But she sent me a piece of like a 15-minute long piece of classical music from someone I had not heard of, and it was very dark and dramatic, and so I had to completely reframe kind of my thought because I was thinking in my head, okay, I'm taking these pictures which could be very benign. It could be a picture of a rabbit, or someone's pet or their kids or whatever. I'm writing something very kind of general to putting me through this experience, and that's Maria Pavlados, if you're out there. um, she gave me this piece of classical music, and I had to completely reframe like what I was going to write about. And I ended up writing about this piece about this elderly woman in this kind of dilapidated Victorian home, waiting for her lover who had passed on, and eventually the house crumbles and he kind of comes out and takes her away. And it had nothing to do with the song. I don't even know what the song was about. It was classical. It had no words. I didn't read into it. I don't even remember what it was called, to be perfectly honest. Um, but it took me on like kind of a journey with the music. So that's the story that came from it. So I can write just about anything.
I see. That's what I'm talking about. And I mentioned before you got here. Like, see, that's what separates you. That's what makes you an elite poet, and someone who's your writing skills and your poetry skills are extraordinary. Not everybody has that level of skill that you do. Um,
Thank you.
where do I mean,
I like
you go ahead.
this. Someone's asking about the reader's emotional response. What I think about that versus telling my stories. They're both important. I mean, I have a story to tell, and I'm going to tell, the entire poem, maybe 10%, 25, 50%, 90%. It all is going to be different. It could be truth versus fiction. And I will put my own creativity in there to kind of help, close off whatever it is that I'm trying to say. but the person that reads it needs to have their own emotional experience with it. So whether poetry can be consumed in many ways, whether they're a reader, they can read it in print, they can read it in an ebook. If they like to listen, they can stream it. If they like to go in person and see performance, they can listen to it that way. However they want to consume it is fine, and whatever they get from it is fine. They're not going to get my exact story, because I'm not literally saying, a truth is this. I'm not saying XYZ did happen on XYZ date. So there's some, little magic in there, right? That changes the facts a little bit. So it allows the reader to kind of take what they want from it. And if it is the meaning that I had, great. Sometimes I have to read it a few times to realize what the meaning is myself, because, like I said, it's very, very automatic for me.
Has that ever happened where you've lost touch with some of your reading? I mean, some of your writing, you write
Mm.
a piece, you write a poem, and then maybe you come back 10 years or so and you pick it up, and the mood that you're in, the state of mind you're in at that time. Have you ever picked it up and having that come back to you in a rush? It's just another really strong poem, but you don't have that
Um,
connection anymore.
uh, uh, Two answers. One is constantly. I write constantly, like every day. So there's no way for me to memorize and remember everything that I write. So I can, find some writings from 2 years ago or 5 years ago and read them like they're brand new. And be like, oh wow, that's not bad. I don't remember doing that. And, for me, that's an interesting experience, because then I get to experience it, kind of unconsciously, whatever I meant when I wrote the piece. And then I get to experience it kind of consciously as that first time reader, hearing it or reading it, and combine that into like a one experience. Um, but my older stuff, the first book I put out was called Theories in Lucid Dreaming, and I wrote it, put out in 2005. So it was quite a while ago. And it was deeply rooted in a story of betrayal, a relationship betrayal. And there was some anger attached to that story, because it happened when I was younger. And when we're younger, in our 20s, everything in the world is the end of the world, right? So there was some anger attached to it. And so that first book is a little bit of an angry book. So if I go back and read it, I don't feel those same feelings anymore, because that person is in my past. That person's in my past. So I read it almost as if I'm reading someone else's story now. So it's interesting, and I'm actually going to put that book out hopefully next year, as a version 2, kind of reflections. So I'll have new pieces kind of reflecting on, well, I thought this was the end of the world, but it wasn't, and kind of complete that story, at some point.
Yeah, emotional poetry. It is interesting. I mean, I think of I mean, I think we think about musical lyrics. I think a lot of people can probably relate to this. That you look at someone like a Taylor Swift, who has made it a practice to basically, as soon as something happens in her life, she immediately puts it in a song. You know,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
like, whatever it is happens to her, it's you're going in the song. If you have the door open for her while she walked in, you're in the song. If you like
Right.
cats,
Probably.
if you mistreat her, you're in a song. Um,
Definitely.
I look at that, and I sort of look at it. I part of me looks at it like, wow, it's sort of like, it does sort of remind me of someone who's much younger than who she is. Like, I sort of get that sort of feeling when you're 15 or 16 years old. But when you're 33 or 34, and I just find, like, I understand that she's frustrated, and she's like, she's hurt, she's angry, or whatever, or anybody in that matter. But you sort of think that once you get to that age, there's probably a little bit more conductive and creative ways to let that energy out, and then to go out there and splat somebody's name out there. And the thing is you can't go back and you can't take it back. You know, you can't sit
Right.
there and say, "Gee, that was sort of like," or reflect. Like how
Yeah.
you mentioned, now you can go back to your book and you can write your reflections on what you're
Right.
feeling at that time. But it's 10 years. When
Right.
we
If I
see
go
it,
back
when
to
we
high school stuff, and I read it, like I said, it's very shallow, so my emotions don't get extremely deep. And I can see where maybe it was a good idea, but I could improve upon it greatly. But I was also a kid when I wrote it.
right,
Uh, but I think some people, whether they're writers, whether they're musicians, whether they're, actors, everyone can get typecast into some type of scenario. And Taylor Swift, like many musicians, is kind of typecast into her persona. And she just did an album called Tortured Poets or something. So I've not listened to it. I'm
I guess she
borderline
did the
wondering if I
same
should.
thing.
I
I
don't
guess,
know if I want to listen to it yet. I haven't decided. I'm
yeah.
not a fan, but not that I'm not a fan. I don't listen to that type of music. But I think that your poetry is going to change throughout your life because your life is going to change.
Yes.
It might not get better or worse, but the stories will change and the way you respond to them will change and the way you present them will change. So, things that might have made me very angry when I was a kid or when I was younger, that I wrote about, or things that I did, when I was younger that I wrote about, are not the same type of things that I would do now or write about now because they're different. It's a different time in my life.
What's what's the difference between, to me, it's like, what's the difference? And I'm sure you can spot this. Some people, like they said, they always have an act. There's always a gimmick to it, so to speak, or so. How do like you see a lot of poets, or a lot of far more spoken word, but people get out there and it just seems like they just say stuff for the reaction. Like there's no heart to the words that they're saying. Oh, they're coming out, but there's no really richness in it. They're just saying the words, and they're not really believing in what they're saying. They're just speaking just to hear themselves speak. Um, do you think we have that in today's self-absorbed society? Do we see more and more poetry or more spoken word artists? Do we see more of that happening now, where they stand up before, where it's like they're sharing for the sake of sharing, versus now they're out there. How does this benefit just me?
I will say that there's a lot of poets, and I would say more junior poets, people who maybe haven't written before, it's their first book or their first, chapbook or attempts, that tend to write very short, and not short in a form like haiku, but just short, 2, 3, 4 lines of emotional, longing, loving, missing, uh, dating, relationship kind of sadness poetry. Something along the lines of, how could you leave me when I was so good to you? And that's it, the entire page. And that's not a story to me. That's a part of a greeting card. So, I'll take an unpopular position to, in the respect of those poets that, you know, haven't learned to grow past that point yet. And they will. They absolutely will if they continue with it, because I think we all start somewhere. My first poem rhymed. Um, but they need to grow beyond 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 lines. You cannot tell an entire story in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 lines. You
No,
can't have a beginning, a middle, and an end to a story. You can't send a message. You can't emote a feeling. You can't develop a feeling in some.
no, I agree. Oh, she froze.
And
I'm like,
where did he go?
right here. Are you still with us?
Yes, you just disappeared. I didn't.
Okay. Um, You know what I like to do now that we have a quick break right here, but I would love to hear something from you. I would love to hear a poem or a spoken word piece from you. Oh, now she locked up again. Oh,
Now I can.
okay, okay. Now you see. Okay. Did you hear? I was wondering if Katie, if you'd like to share a poem with us.
Sure.
I would love to hear that.
Sure. So I'll do, I mean, I have my favorites memorized, so that's probably the easiest ones, right? So these are ones that if any of my friends are joining, may have already heard, but I don't care because they're my favorites, and that's how it works.
They're your friends, so
Um,
they'll love it anyway.
so I'm not going to read it, but I'll show you. In my book, one cool thing I did was add art to every piece. So there's art attached to this piece. I'm not going to find it, but it's it's also in there as well. Never mind. Okay, so unbothered dirt. With bare feet on the earth, after ditching those high heels, one single victory after trading spiked tongues with red fiends, turns out the devil was short, and therefore my life shrank too, after sinking so low to dig in the dirt with my claws to uncover the true nature of danger in his tornado of lies. So his punishment was utter humiliation, as Diablo prized his pride. In the public square, so meticulously crafted, this exercise of defeat in private, no, never. Tempt me again, as even withered. It appears my fight is quite orchestrated, like a symphony of fingers playing music, dirt under my nails. Giving up appears to be something never learned, and that my souls cherish as they take a step through unbothered dirt.
Yeah, that's some deep, that's some shit right there.
Thank you.
That's why I booked you. That's I absolutely love it. And one good thing about this, if you heard earlier, Katie sleeps about 4 hours a day, and so she is writing a lot, and she is putting on her Instagram a lot. Um,
Yes,
so
yes, quite a
every
bit.
other day there is a new poetry coming
At
out from you.
least something every day, something pretty
Um,
much every day, something
so
pretty much every day.
what? Oh, let's see. Yes. Let's see. It's interesting the case that looking back at high school, she considered the work as shallow compared to her current work. Yes, because she has grown, and we all have grown since high school.
Yeah,
We
I
all
mean,
get deeper
I'm sure
roots.
there were some deep thoughts in there, and I'm sure there were some deep words and some deep pieces. But if I take 20 books and I read through them, I can probably pick out like a handful of pieces that I would take further and write and use now. Um, there's one in my first book that I actually started in high school, and there's one in my second book that I started in high school. Uh, but I changed. I grew. I had more experiences, so the poetry is different.
Um, Now, I have a question for you. This is a basic question, and that's just because I actually get asked this question a lot. But what's the primary difference between poetry and spoken word?
One is visual, one's auditory. Um, written poetry, I think people need an affinity for, just like they need an affinity for any type of writing. Some people read nonfiction, historical, romance, westerns, whatever. So there has to be an initial interest there, and then an ability to have the patience to read through some poetry first, whether it's good or bad, to get a sense of what it is, to find out what you like before giving up. I think a lot of people give up on certain kinds of reading very easily, and I'm not I'm not a terribly difficult read, but I'm not an easy read. I certainly use all the words in the dictionary. Um, but in spoken word poetry, you can express your feelings to people, and it kind of crosses barriers of experiences and languages and things like that that music can. So if I'm performing and I'm trying to express something and I'm trying to say something, and in my voice, like there's a line in my voice or in my one of my pieces where I get really quiet for like a second, in that piece. And so I think that um, you can use that and tell a story that maybe someone who English isn't their first language, or even if they do not understand the language, can get the emotion and get kind of the general vibe of the piece if you present it correctly and if you use your physical emotions, correctly. So that's it. And I think it's more accessible. Like someone can like go to an open mic and understand it, a lot faster and easier than they can opening a book sometimes. Although I am definitely like a print book girl at heart. But
Yeah, I think that, I agree with you. I think that, poetry is, of the two, it probably is the most creative, the more, it's like I said before, I've seen people do spoken word, and it's more like it's more like a shouting match. Like I can speak louder than you. One person will follow after each other, and they all try to, they're trying to be louder without, but it's like louder signifying nothing. It's like just because you're loud doesn't mean you're deep or profane. It just means that you're loud.
I
Um,
have a natural projection to my voice, so I don't need a microphone most of the time. Uh, Not everyone has that. Not everyone can do that. In a larger environment, I can't do that. But it's not that I'm shouting, it's just that I project really loud.
Yeah, but you
There
know
we
what
go.
but you think it's though, Katie, is like what you're doing. I'm saying I've seen people got up there who really don't know what they're doing. I mean, they're getting out there and they're looking for that reaction, but they don't really understand what they're saying. They're just looking for reaction. If I say this certain key words, I'm gonna get a reaction. Or if I say, like, some use curse words in there, so they'll use those curse words to shock, but not really saying anything. They're not telling a story. They're being loud. And
I
a lot
really
of it has to do with
rarely use curse words. In my last book, I don't think there's any, maybe. I think there's one in my first book or two. I don't
I've
know why.
commented on here to screenwriters. I've commented that, one of the ways you could tell a movie that's written really well is the amount of curse words that are in it. The more
Movies
curse
are
words,
different.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
they'll
more
be
the
a
more
little
curse
different.
words you have in a movie, the more poorly written it is.
They
Because
just fill it in with
yeah, yeah. Oh, I
shit.
could, yeah, like Tarantino is a master of that. I mean, you go listen to his
He's great
movies, and,
though.
and they're counting the words, how many times he's used certain words. They're
He hides
counting that
so many Easter eggs in his movies, though, that I honestly don't know. That I have friends that tell me, watch this or listen to this or rewatch this part because he hides a lot of things in the movies, which I think is really cool. Um, give Katie's channel a thought.
oh
Oh,
yeah, he
okay.
followed
Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, that's interesting because um, Instagram's my biggest channel. I started there because at first I was just posting kind of static poetry, and that's the place for it, right? Instagram. But I obviously had to branch out. YouTube is seems like the hardest place to get subscribers, and I have like 250 spoken word videos in a playlist on my page. I have two entire albums with music, and I haven't figured out that not that I put a ton of work into it, the algorithm yet of how to get subscribers.
You know what? I can't. I wish I could tell you that too. As far as the poetry goes, I don't understand that myself. Like I said, like when I have writers on here or whatnot, it always struggles, because the
Yeah.
algorithm's not getting it out that I'm interviewing a poet or a writer or a novelist. It just doesn't get out. And
Yeah. Well,
so, but
my name is unique, so that's one good thing. So I get my own name on every social media channel. So
Oh, okay.
that's all. Like at Kaytee Thrun is everything except for my Facebook page is at Kaytee Thrun LLC. But everything else is at Kaytee Thrun everywhere that I exist, even though I don't use all of them, but
Um,
everywhere I do
I want
exist.
you know what? I want to get back to one thing, if you don't mind sharing this. I know some people don't like to do this, some people do, but take us to a day of you as a creator, nothing but a creator. So let's say today,
Sure.
what would let's do two things. Let's do 2 days. One, let's go with Katie as she writes. Like she gets up, she gets something to drink, and then she's gonna write. And then I want to know how do you get ready for a day of show where you know you're going to be reading.
Okay.
What how do you prepare yourself for that?
Okay. Uh, Poorly most of the time. I am an over preparer that rushes at the last minute. Hi, Kitty.
The Cheetah on the
Um, Mine can't quite. I'm on stool high chair, so she can't quite make it all the way up here. On a normal day, just from a creative perspective, um, I mean, there's work things that you have to do every day. So whether it's getting ready and recording videos, editing videos, posting them, doing all the social media stuff. Um, in the middle of watching a movie, I'll stop and I'll write a poem, for no reason. I'll just like be like, I
How
need
does that work?
silence and
How,
write.
how does that
I
how
don't
does it
know.
work?
I don't know.
I can't even relate to that, Katie, because it's like my brain's like I would love to have that, but
There's
I
a
just don't.
there's a great video. It's on here. It's on my Instagram as well. I took this challenge, which was to describe your creative process in 5 minutes, and you were supposed to just like put the phone up to the ceiling, like no video. But I actually added a really cool video that my friend Johnny took. Uh, but I just hit play or hit record and just went and described my creative process in 5 minutes, and it shocked the hell out of me because I I have one because it exists in me, but I literally don't understand it. Uh, when I write something, as I mentioned before, I'll get all the way to the end. And before doing that ending line, which is kind of like the banger line that I want to be really cool, I have to go back and read the entire piece because I won't understand what I'm ending. I won't understand the entire point of the piece until I reread it. All of that just kind of comes out of me unconsciously, which is why old poetry is new.
Is that a drawback though to when you write so fast like that? And is it a drawback? Because a lot of people will sit there and they'll like some writers will sit there in front of the keyboards and they'll just they already have an idea, or they'll wait for an idea to come, or they have an or they have an outline or whatever, and then they can start writing. Is it a little bit risky to suddenly get impulsive, like, wow, I just saw a butterfly. I could sit and write something down in there and spend 20 minutes doing it. You're just furiously writing about it. Do you ever look at any of those pieces and go like, I love this idea, but I don't think this is me. I don't think this is something that would this is not I'm not really seeing it through my eyes.
Oh, you're not? That's okay then. Okay. It could be, honestly, it could be Chicago. With anytime we have storms, there's always trees down. There's always power lines down. So Chicago's very used to having periods of time where there's electrical outages and internet and cable and all that stuff. So I would not be surprised if that was the case.
There's a lot of inspiration in Chicago. You mentioned earlier about
There is.
Chicago being the ground floor for spoken word. Uh, I mean, how many places are there in Chicago? I mean, what makes Chicago so poetry and spoken word so rich? What are they doing differently that nobody around the country is doing?
Now, I wouldn't say so many things, but historically, the Green Mill was where the first like kind of poetry slams began and continued on. And while what someone would think of as a poetry slam, kind of like a rap battle, you know, doesn't happen as much anymore. Open mics do, and they're all over. I have a bunch of friends that do open mics either weekly or monthly. Um, I have a Eros who hosted the one at the Harold Washington Library, has one every Tuesday in Hazel Crest. There's a gentleman, Geronimo Speaks, has one every week. Uh, Wesley Hine has one once a month at the Gallery Cabaret, and this is obviously only going to mean something to Chicago people. Uh, Carl has one at Tangible Books in Chicago once a month. So depending on how many people you want to get in front of and how low key, chill, or energetic you want the event to be, there's all types of open mics all the time. And I don't know why that is. They're mostly in the city of Chicago, but you can find them in the suburbs.
I'm gonna.
I don't know why. I think it's
After,
an artistic city.
I'm curious now, and I'm gonna do this as soon as we're done here. But I'm gonna type in my area, and I'm gonna see how many people or how many spoken word and poetry readings are around us. I can tell you right now, we won't even have 10% of what you guys have. We just won't. Steve says, so she pours it out, then reads it later before finishing it, and perhaps
Uh,
we take the written
no,
word.
so it all happened. Like I literally write something in like 5 or 10 minutes. I can order DoorDash and have it written before the food gets here. So, um,
You ever written a
but
poem about the dinner you're getting?
no. But if I write
Poetry,
something,
poetry challenge.
I just keep writing and I keep thinking and I keep thinking about the actual sentence that I'm writing, line by line by line. So when I get to the end and I want to do the last line, I don't remember every single line. So that's why I reread them and then do the last line and then title it. And from that point on, I do very little editing ever. Spelling, some grammatical stuff like that. But I do very little editing because I think that whatever made me say that in the first place was strong enough that I don't want to edit it to death. Then it'll be a different piece.
Um, I was wondering, I'm gonna have to fight for this one. I was wondering if you'd like to read another piece.
Sure. Steven says, if I ever come out with a book of poems, I'd love to give it a shot. I have 3 books out now. I have 2 books of poetry and I have a young adult novel. Um, my last book is called Discarding the Ragdoll, and it is poetry and art and photography. So I enlisted 6 different artists that I know to contribute their work to the book. So almost every piece has a piece of art along with it or photography. Um, and it tells one long story. So I call my poetry books novels and poems, so that if you read start to finish, it's one long story. If you read each of the 4 chapters separately, they're 4 separate stories. So when I did the albums, I did them as 4 separate albums. So
That's
you
really
can
cool.
give my stuff a shot right now. It's out
Now, do
there.
they have to? Are they all in order?
Are the poems in order? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
should get 1, 2, 3, and then 4.
For like the albums, yes. I've released 2 albums so far. So I've released they're all called Discarding the Ragdoll Part and then 1, 2, 3, 4. And
Right.
part 1 is My Past Lover. So that is kind of a romantically macabre is how I call my writing. So it's a romantic, heartbreaking kind of album. And chapter in the book. And the second one is my instigators. So that is kind of when things take a turn and you see kind of the devil behind the mask, so to speak, of someone you're with. So that is a less happy chapter or album, but it's more aggressive. And then I still have 3 and 4 to put out, which is the third and fourth chapter.
That's interesting. I mean, that's some powerful subject matter. I mean, we were just talking about that with the song lyrics, and here you are, you're putting that down. But just think about. I mean, to me, how long did it take you to write those 4 albums or those 4 books? How long did it take you And how did you decide which pieces that would each book receive?
Uh, Interesting story. Uh, During COVID, not from COVID, but during COVID era, my mother passed away from a long-term illness, and I had been uh, caring for her. And I started writing towards the end of her illness, just trying to get back into it because I'd gone a span of time not writing because I was caring for her, and that occupies a great deal of your time. And when she passed, I had a lot of time back, and I had a lot of built up stories and a lot of built up emotions. So I wrote like 4 books, like worth of content in like a year and a half or something. So I had a huge amount of content to choose from, and I really read through it all, and it told me the story. So I didn't have a story in mind. I just had a bunch of poetry, hundreds of pieces of poetry. And the last book has 99 pieces and then 2 hidden ones, 2 Easter egg ones. So there's actually 101 pieces in the book. There's 99 tracks on the albums. And I let it tell me the story. So I kind of started sorting similar pieces together into stacks and then let it tell me what it was trying to tell me. And there was a story in there. Now, did everything get in? No. Three-fourths of the stuff that I wrote is not published is yet at all. So I have a book that's coming out in October and then another one in 2025. So a lot more to come.
I love the creativity. I absolutely do. I didn't start I didn't start writing. I didn't start writing either until my wife got sick. Uh, I didn't really write any poetry per se, but I wrote what was going on. And she too passed away, and I too kept
Oh,
on
I'm so
writing.
sorry.
Thank you, and for me and for your mom. I'd like to thank your mom if you'll allow me to do this. I'd like to thank Katie's mom very much for giving her helping her discover her voice and helping her with her talent. I mean, moms and dads give us that. I mean, there's part of their soul that goes into us to help us create that creative flower. I don't ever believe that we all develop it solely by ourselves. Like, I did this by
No,
myself.
no.
No one
I
helped me.
I
No, I don't
definitely
believe.
believe that there's, things that I inherited from my parents. I mean, a creativity from my father, um, and an insane drive, and well, attitude from my mother, and my English from my mother as well. Um, but it wasn't all roses, right? They were not.
Of
Um,
course,
oh my goodness, sorry, I didn't have the volume off on my phone. They were not,
they
perfect
weren't perfect.
parents by any stretch of the imagination. And the book I'm going to put out in 2025, um, is going to talk about someone, um, from an age of really understanding what's going on in the world through like early 20s. And there'll be some stories in there that, come from my life, and they're not all beautiful stories. I mean, yes, there's things from my parents that I absolutely, am glad and respect that they gave to me. But like everyone else, I think, with little exception, there's also some stories there.
Oh yeah. Well, I can tell you right now, my mom and my dad, quite honestly, my parents who I grew up with, who I identify as my parents, they gave me a lot. My biological parents, not so much, but but I respect that. I respect what I got.
Hmm.
My
Yeah.
who raised me, they weren't necessarily. One was a Marine, one was a nurse. There wasn't a lot of poetry or spoken word in the house, but they did give me something. They gave me the love of language. They gave me the love to read and to
Hmm.
have imagination. They allowed me to have an imagination, and without that, I wouldn't be here doing this. I wouldn't be
Right.
able to, so, um, real quick though, I'm not real quick because we're gonna talk a little bit longer, but I definitely want you to go ahead and showcase another beautiful piece of poetry. And thank you so much for sharing. Like I said
Okay.
before we got here, I mentioned how priceless this is. This is like asking a comic to do a set for free, or a musician to play a song for free. This is not just out here. This is a gift, and I do thank you for sharing your
Okay.
gift with.
I'll do one of my friend's favorite pieces,
Okay.
and it's called Black Parasol. Nightmares, or possibly fortuitous dreams, each late sunset, have me just slow pace strolling down an old boardwalk, lace parasol twisting in my fingertips and spinning in circles above my cerebellum. Impossibly tiny warm raindrops speckle my shoes, but who counts them all? Not me. This walk seemed necessary to move beyond and forward. Still hearing echoes, though, sometimes. Don't lie, we still do. Each cut or bruise or unkind word showed us their demons, trying to claw their way into our world through scratches and vicious bites. Every sunrise to sundown stayed too long still haunts us. The exaggerated play we had to act out to secure back our hearts was dramatic but worthy. We once wanted to crush those dry, broken hearts in our bare hands, for they held too much ache. But in the warmth of this downpour, the water is on my face and cleansing me, washing away the stench of you and the poison that always drips from your lips. For once in my life, this flood is not tears, but raindrops escaping through my spinning black parasol.
Uh, that's beautiful, and
Thank
and
you.
and relatable. That's really what, to me, good poetry would do. I can relate to that one. I can I can feel that. Um,
I
I
do
wish
that
I
one
had.
often, and I've probably overread it on social media. So apologies to everyone for doing that piece like once a month. But I do love it, and it's one of my good friend's favorites. So when I see her, I always like if she's at a show, I always do it for her.
It's a beautiful piece. I
Thank you.
wish I had the gift for that. I do. I mean, if I was in music for 10 years as a talent buyer, and I saw hundreds of bands. But if I had to
Yeah, I
choose
can't play
one,
an instrument at all, but
but
everyone
you know
has
what
some
though?
type of creative talent, and you're
But,
you're
but
using it now.
I, 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 before, I would rather have the gift of poetry to be able to write that than to be a musician. I would love to have your gift more than a musician.
Uh, More than a single instrument, I would agree. I think a good lyricist, a good multi instrumental musician that sings is a poet. Uh, if you break a really good song down, it's poetry. So if you're talking about like a natural born kind of musician person, they're a poet.
I mean,
Um,
musicians do the two. There's two ways a musician looks at a lyric. One, it comes from the heart. Like, we were talking a bit before about old time country music back in the '70s. Back then, they used to do songs that would be 6, 7, 8 minutes long on the radio.
right,
Today, now it's 3.5 minutes, 3 minutes.
right.
It's constricted. There's no room to maneuver. You can't be daring. You can't be innovative. Not unless you can do it within 3 minutes. And you
Yeah,
go,
on radio it's hard. Like
it's
on your
very
album, you could have a longer song, but
true.
it's not going to get airplay
No,
if it. Yeah, you're right. Because they have to
yeah.
fit in commercials and everything too.
So here you are. You got that commercial brain. I gotta, what can I rhyme with world girl? Everybody does it. Okay,
Pearl,
that's a lick. That's a
pearls.
hook right there.
I,
Right.
I I like to rhyme words that don't rhyme. Like world, I would put with like plural because it doesn't rhyme, but it kind of does, but it doesn't. So that's what I would do, something like that.
But I mean, I could go through. I mean, more than any other song genre or song, category. Man, country music has the most simplistic words. I hate to say it. I hate to. It may sound sort of mean, but they also are playing to the lowest denominator. They're, it's like, if you go back and really listen to their lyrics, everything rhymes the same way.
Yeah.
There's no stairway to heaven in country music.
Yeah. I haven't listened to radio in a really long time. I have an
Either.
Android, so I have YouTube. I'm very addicted to my own playlists, and everything. So I don't have to deal with the commercials, which is fantastic. But never really exposed to country music, and weirdly, as a child, uh, from my parents, not really exposed to music a ton, even though they were artists. Music wasn't forefront in their artistic expression. So I kind of had to develop my own music taste and find my own music as I grew up.
Yeah, I didn't listen to commercial radio. I didn't listen to commercial radio. Still haven't since I got here to Michigan for going on 25 years. Now, I
My
will
last,
say this as a disclaimer. I will say this as a disclaimer. The bands that you see on this show, and I'm not just saying this either because I'm using the one gift I do have. The one gift I may not have the gift of poetry, but I do have the gift of a good band of a good songwriter. And I will say that the bands that I have here are definitely top drawer. I would definitely say that. I wouldn't have them on if I didn't think so. Um, so I
but
mean, no, I wouldn't. A good song, like you said, a good lyricist who wasn't afraid to go out of that 3.5 minute, 3 minute, 3.5 minute, limit that, and still able to express themselves in a song. More power to them, and I'll listen to you all day long.
well, if you
Uh,
have 3.5 minutes, that's twice as long as most of my poems. So if you have 3.5 minutes, there's a lot you can say. You can tell a full story. And there's certain songs, I can't off the top of my head think of one, but like if you think of the videos that go along with it, the videos are almost telling the story of the song. So those people were able to craft that story in 3.5 minutes. It's not easy when you're
no,
adding in
the
music.
majority,
It's not easy at all, but it
the
certainly is
majority don't
possible
do
because
it.
I do it in half the time.
Yeah, but the majority of the vast majority of bands cannot tell a proper story in 3.5 minutes. 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes. You'd be surprised how much you
Yeah,
can.
and it depends on the kind of music too, and it depends on the era and a lot of different things. Taste, you know,
Yeah.
everyone's tastes are different.
Let me go back to the chat real quick. Our good friend Larry the Horror Cat Dad is here, and our friend Jen is here. Hi Jen, I'm glad you're here. And she says she doesn't listen to the radio. She doesn't listen to the radio much either. I see a lot of people don't really listen to a lot of radio. Same here. Only keep up with favorite bands that are still around, and of course my favorites. See, yeah, I have to reply on YouTube's algorithm saying give stuff my way. Yeah, that's probably what it is. If you leave a comment on somebody's page, which means you'll be following and subbing to Katie's page, so you can leave her a comment so she can get some algorithm love. Um,
I do
so
read the comments. It's social media is a funny thing, and YouTube is different because you just have the comment section. But on other social media, direct messages can be an interesting world to stay
yes,
out of. So honestly, if someone comments on a video of mine, they're 99% more likely that I'm going to read it because I try as best I can to like heart or like everyone's comments. So I acknowledge them, and then I pick my favorite of the week. So every week I have a favorite comment, uh, and I'll highlight that. It's always in my stories. You can find it.
this
I'll
may
highlight
sound
that
sort
person
of
and like relate him
this,
to a
this may
poem.
sound really
So.
goofy to you, Katie, but do you ever get inspired by anything, any other people who write to you? Do you get inspired by that to write poetry with that?
Um, like I said, I can get inspired with anything. I have a show on July 20th at the Otherworld Theater on Clark in Chicago at 10 p.m. And it's with my spoken word trio, The Poetica, which is Faith C. Rice and Shalay Lorraine. Um, I can give you their links to add to this as well.
Sure.
But for that particular show, the theater it's a great not-for-profit, heavily grant-funded, endowment for the arts kind of theater that focuses primarily on science fiction and fantasy theater productions and indie playwrights and musicals and things like that. So we are going on after a Greek play, our musical, The Lightning Thief. That's a play. So we decided to give a nod to Greek mythology in our set. Well, I didn't have a bunch of Greek poetry laying around or a bunch of poetry referencing Greek gods. So I needed to kind of come up with a concept and then write some pieces and then see what I had with some pieces and then find a way to thread it together into one story, because I like my set. So if it's 20, if we each do 20 minutes, so if I do 20 minutes, I like to tell a full story in that 20 minutes. And I like people to leave kind of with an experience at the end of 20 minutes. So that's what I've been working on. Our rehearsal is this weekend, so fingers crossed it goes well. But that was the first time I ever wrote, I've ever written about Greek mythology before. So
Hopefully, I'm not sure if it'll happen, but hopefully someone will videotape some of that and we'll see it on
yeah,
YouTube.
we're gonna live stream it.
Oh,
we're gonna try. Well, we're gonna try to live stream it. We'll see how our AV support is at night, but we'll try to live stream it.
And that will be on that's on the 20th. That'll be on a Saturday.
Right. It's on a Saturday night at the Otherworld Theater on Clark in Chicago. And it's a really cool little theater. It's like a theater, not like you're going to the theater in the gown. It's like a cool, funky little theater with a bar, and there's several different rooms, and they have lots of local actors and playwrights and things that get involved. So it's a cool place. I mean, even I've been there for another event. I went there for an Edgar Allan Poe themed. Places will do like themed nights. They had an Edgar Allan Poe themed night that I actually read at their place. It was great.
I think you'd be awesome. I would love to hear Poe's words with you reading it. That would be quite spectacular. Quite spectacular.
I've done a couple times on my channel reading other people's poetry, is what I call it, but it's been my friend's poetry, so it hasn't been
Are you comfortable reading someone like a Poe? Are you comfortable reading their words, or do you feel rather stay in the comfort of your own original material?
I could, but I don't think that I'll give the right emphasis to it. I don't think that I'll give the right emotion to it because it didn't come from my brain. And I know actors learn to give emotion at points, so I could learn to do that. But at least with my own writing, I know unconsciously what I was feeling. So that gives me the ability to kind of arc what I'm saying a little more.
I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do this one last question. Then we're going to hear one last piece from Kaytee, and then we're going to let her go.
I have not watched the Fall of the House of Usher series on Netflix. I'm not a huge TV person, but I have not watched that. Is it good?
I heard it was good. Let's see. Yes.
You never know when they do things on.
I try to make time to do videos, so something always comes up. So you have to do a rush job on recording and editing. See, that's the beautiful thing about when you're a poet, like Kaytee is that you can just relax.
Cat dad.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of cat lovers on here. What can I say?
I have a cat. I've always had a black cat.
Yeah, I had a tuxedo before I got Paladin. I had a tuxedo named Derek Jeter. And then after he crossed over, and then I got an orange and white. He's a part British short hair and he's part cheetah. I have no idea how that happened. I just benefited from it, and so you saw him earlier. Yeah, that's the cheetah.
He's up in the corner. Wait.
Yeah, that's it.
Right
that's
there.
him. He's the guest guardian angel right there.
Guest star. Yeah.
Every guest that gets under the protection of the cheetah.
Yeah.
All right, Kaytee.
My cat is not anywhere to be seen, so.
Oh well, next time you come through, we'll definitely have you. We'll definitely see you and your cat. But I personally would love to have you read off one more piece for us to write out into
Sure.
the sunset with.
Sure.
And yeah.
This is a piece that I've closed a show with, um, and I'm going to rewrite part of uh, and do, but I think it's powerful, so it's a good ending one. So um, it is Unsettling the Table.
Oh, it's a great title.
My story, sorry, Unsettling the Table. My story is played out quite like the chaos of thunder, taking handfuls of silverware and throwing them into the car engine just to turn it on while it rattles and clanks viciously. Inside is the utter accustomed chaos, but from outside lulls rhythmic metallic drum beats that echo in the storm rain. We fool ourselves into thinking it is nothing but music until the steam starts to hiss and the flatware burns chestnut. This machine was not designed to exist in extraordinary chaos, but it seems that I was.
Mm, that's awesome.
So
Thank
that's a
you.
personal favorite too.
Thank you so much, Kaytee, for coming on and
Thank you.
hanging with us. This has been a real honor. I was
Thank
so
you.
excited. I was real excited to so excited to have you on when you said yes. And I've been looking forward to this ever since you agreed to do it.
That's
And
awesome.
thanks to you. We're gonna be getting we'll reach out and hopefully get some other posts to come up here and share their
Yeah.
gifts with us as well. I'm looking forward to that. That I'm looking
Yeah,
forward
I
to.
had mentioned there was a couple different poets. I was thinking if you got them on together, could be hilariously awesome. Um, is my opinion, but definitely a good show.
I definitely would have I would have anybody to recommend it. I would do that in a heartbeat. Obviously, obviously you know, Nara, you're very talented yourself, but I'm sure I'm sure you're around a lot of very talented writers and creatives as well, and that does rub off, and feed on everybody. Everybody feeds off that positive energy, and we definitely need more of that. And I will definitely reach out to you, and we will talk to the two people you mentioned, and I would love to have them come on if they agree to do so. And if so, we will have them on here on Eight Questions with. And when you get done with your books 3 and 4, when you get done with
Four and
that,
five.
4 and 5, I
Oh,
would
the albums 3 and 4.
run.
Yeah, I set terrible deadlines for myself. Like I always miss the deadlines that I set for myself for creative projects. I don't know why I even announced them. So I intended to have my next two albums out by now, but I'm probably looking at like July, August for the third and the fourth. And then after that, I'm going to do more advertising. I haven't done a ton of advertising for the first two, but you can stream them on every streaming channel under my name and
Well, I
every
would like to
social media at Kaytee Thrun.
I would definitely love to have you come back during the fall season for sure. If not
Yeah, I'll have
Halloween,
another book out.
yes.
Mhm.
Yes, that would be awesome. And to the chat, I want to thank you guys so much for coming out and supporting this interview. Larry and Jen and Jason was here earlier, and let me see who else because I don't want to miss anybody. I thought let's see, Steve was here. Dante, yes, Dante was here, and Steve was here,
Someone from
and
Arizona
Stephen
and
Chang.
someone
Thank
else.
you so much. Yep, Stephen Chang. Thank you so much. There's our good friend John Doomsday Crypt. He knows as well. He knows his way around a good poem.
Awesome.
Rest assured on that. And thank you guys so much. We will be back here tomorrow night at 8 o'clock with small business owner Mike Piero from Mike's Monsters and Toys. Mike's Monsters, yeah, Toys and Collectibles, and he's got a hell of a story to share tomorrow. Can't wait to meet him. Hopefully, you guys can all come back and hear it. Please share out this interview out among your social media. I would appreciate that as well. And thank you for coming. And we will see you tomorrow night. And Kaytee, stay right where you're at for one more minute. And to everybody else, thank you. And we will see you soon. Peace.